Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Sorry if you were in both sessions. That was a very short break, but we were having too spirited a discussion and asked you to make too many decisions too quickly on that quiz. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Liz Prince from Amicus, who's going to be talking about state-of-the-art hiring, retaining, and developing new talent.
Thanks very much, Rick. So welcome to our session today. We've got an amazing panel of guests from studios across the UK who have had to pivot their processes to manage to continue to provide opportunities into the games industry for entry-level talent. With the impact of Brexit, it's obviously much more important than ever that we identify and nurture homegrown talent, so studios have definitely had to adapt to stay on target for future growth. So we're going to find out what they did, how it went, what's changed forever, and how they're shaping things as we evolve into our new way of working post-crisis. Obviously, if there are any questions from the audience, please pop them into, I think it's the Q&A or the chat, and we'll definitely be able to get to those as we go through. So I just think it might be great if we can just do a really quick intro to everybody. I've already been here this morning. Liz Prince, I run a specialist games recruitment business called Amicus. Been in the industry for too long, 27 years as a recruiter, and a woman in games for 16 years. I also founded an initiative called Putting the Gene to Gaming, focusing on accelerating gender diversity in games. Nick, you're up on my left.
No problem. So my name's Nick Duncombe. I'm the head of recruitment at Playground Games. We're an Xbox game studio based in Leamington Spa. We've got 2 studios and are responsible for the Fable and Forza Horizon franchise.
Lovely. Gemma?
Hello, I'm Gemma Johnson-Brown, COO at Dovetail Games. We make simulations focused on trains and fishing on UE4 for console and PC. And I'm also executive board member and ambassador director for Women in Games.
Perfect, thank you. Kieran?
Hi everyone, Kieran Holland. So I'm the talent acquisition manager at the Sumo Group, supporting recruitment at Pipeworks and Atom Hawk, and leading the recruitment team at Sumo Digital. So recruiting across a large number of studios across the globe, 40 live projects at the moment. So yeah, we've had to adapt. This will be an interesting panel.
For certain. Emma?
I'm Emma Smith. I'm head of talent at Creative Assembly. I've been at Creative Assembly for 12 years, but I feel like I've been recruiting for all sorts. I've worked in charity and public and private sector, and yeah, we've had lots of different challenges in my particular area. I look after recruitment for the studio, but also relocation, immigration, and I lead our legacy project, which is our commitment to supporting the next generation of game developers.
Now, we also have a fellow panel member, Matt Carroll, but I can't see him on screen at the moment. Matt, are you actually here with us or not? I feel like a seance, is that bad?
I think his connection dropped and he's trying to get back on.
Okay, so if we get him back, then we'll get him to do a really quick intro. So thanks very much. So I wanted to start with starting with hiring during the pandemic. So have you guys hired grads, entry-level people in 2020, or was the tap just turned off? Nick, how did it go for you?
Yeah, so it was interesting. Speaking about this previously, it's I think when a year ago, or just over a year ago, when we were all starting to grab our monitors and our laptops and run from the studio and head home, I think there was a lot of thought as to how this is going to go. How are we going to hit our recruitment targets? How are we going to hit that budget? And from my point, I think I was quite skeptical. It's always doing on-site interviews and everything. Is someone going to accept a job if they haven't come and visited the studio and had the studio tour and get to see Leamington? And our experience over the last year, I mean, we've had one of the busiest recruitment years we've ever had, with over 100 hires. So we've transitioned pretty much seamlessly using Microsoft Teams to do our interviews. And yeah, the hiring's gone great. I mean, I think we've done 30 entry-level roles, a part of that 100 as well. So still the high numbers of graduates and everything else that you'd expect. It's been a fairly easy transition, which probably isn't an interesting answer.
No, not at all. I think it's really comforting actually to know that the industry has managed to pivot Kieran, what about you? Did the tap turn off for Sumo for entry level?
No, I think in our industry it can't, can it? Because we've grown so quickly. Just like Nick and probably like Emma will talk about as well. We just had to pivot. We all joked and said Merry Christmas as we walked out on the 20th of March, thinking we'll be back in a few months. But I think we planned for it being potentially a bit longer. And yeah, pivoted to Teams. Potentially lost a bit of accuracy, but gained a lot of speed in the process. And yeah, it's worked well. Really similar. Like we're now, I think we've gone from 700 odd to over 1,000 heads. Part of that's acquisition, part of that's recruitment, but within that there's over 300 offers were extended last year, and we've got very similar growth targets this year. So yeah, the fun never stops, it just changes. Our approach has to change.
So if you couldn't, Emma, I'm thinking about CA's presence at things like EGX and just I always see a fantastic group of CA people meeting with students at all sorts of places. How did you manage to replace those type of face-to-face events?
Well, they say to start off with, I did similarly to Nick, and I was thinking, oh my God, how are we going to be able to do this? How are we going to be able to engage those students, especially because they were in a state of anxiety about what their future would hold as they were about to finish education. And it's through conversations actually I had with Charlotte Nangle at GI, and brilliantly we were able to talk, and I could express, thinking, oh, it would be amazing if we could do some kind of digital roadshow where we could reach all these students. And she was really happy to help and support being able to do that, because the footfall from students wanting to have access to industry at those events is so high. Not necessarily just because you want to hire all of them. Yes, you want to give them somewhere to go, but they don't all come to Creative Assembly. They go to lots of different studios, and we're all going to benefit by having these fantastic new entrants. And at our event for GI Academy, we reached like 1,600 students over the event. We would never have done that in person. So actually it became such an amazing opportunity to be able to do that, that we would never been afforded to if we'd carried on as we did before.
Yeah, huge opportunity. Matt, can you hear us?
I can hear you at last. I'm very sorry about that.
No, not at all. We're just worried that we were going to miss you. Matt, we've just done really, really quick intros. So do you want to just let us know whose shirt you're wearing today?
Yes, so I'm joining you on the phone. So if it gives out, it's the phone's fault now. I am the COO of Sports Interactive. We are a studio based in East London. We're 200 people. We also outsource in the UK. So we use a number of other studios to help us get our famous Football Manager game out on lots and lots of platforms.
Fabulous, thank you. So Gemma, we were just talking about hiring, Matt, just to catch you up. I was asking really, what's happened during the pandemic in terms of things like events, maybe where studios were going to come into contact with students. Did grad hiring just drop off a cliff for you guys? Gemma, how did it go at Dovetail?
It's continued. Our location in Medway is not around other studios, so we did a lot of our first stages virtually already, and to attend events, it's just opened up more doors for us, where before we would have to have always a consideration of travel and losing staff from the development cycle. Now it's just more accessible for us.
Yeah. So Matt, how did things go for you in 2020 with your hiring at Sports Interactive?
So I think at an overall level, we've been consistently hiring. We probably hired more in the last year than we ever have done, about 50 people. So we're still hiring a lot. For this audience, what I think is very interesting is we still have a huge shortage of mid and senior levels. And so strategically, we've started to lean in more to the juniors and the grad applicants in order to anticipate, we'll need that resource in future years at a mid-level. So if anything, we've hired more juniors In terms of how we've done it, it's all moved online. It moved very quickly online. And to some extent that gave us advantages. We could do more people could be involved in the process, and we could accommodate our applicants a lot easier and a lot better. So in some ways, it's been a good thing. Just one last thing, we were never that active in going to universities and really trying to tempt them in. It's something that I think we're losing, we weren't doing well enough and we're losing even more. And so I think solutions that combine the academic, where the potential audience is, with the studios, maybe a more direct link is needed for us, at least, than what we've done before. More so now that
No, totally. Nick and Kieran, I know that you've done quite a lot of outreach to universities, haven't you? Nick, how did you replace that in lockdown?
A bit like interviews, we've moved to the digital space. So, we've worked with NextGen in terms of, doing Q&A sessions and everything else with various sorts of institutes. But also, at universities, we've worked with historically doing the university talks, but doing them on Teams and Zoom instead. So there's been a transition. I think, not being on campus, and the new year was always a big recruitment effort in terms of traveling across the UK and Europe to all the various game dev courses at those higher institutes. And we do miss that. And doing mock interviews on site, bringing lead engineers and lead artists on site and doing sort of 20 interviews in a day, it's which is great for the students there, and in terms of increasing their confidence, but also helping us to identify the best talent on those courses. You miss it. There's no way of changing it. But again, we've managed to move fairly easily into a digital sort of place. But we can't wait to be back on the campuses, as soon as we can.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'm definitely interested in what you're going to sort of continue forward with as we come out of lockdown. So Kieran, how did you sort of decide where to go and what to do to meet the grads? Because if someone hasn't met Sumo when they've been thinking about looking for a job, how would they know where you're going to be to meet you?
That's one of our biggest challenges, isn't it? Sumo, we're very big. We've got a lot of opportunities, but we don't necessarily have the brand name in the industry because of the type of work that we do. So a lot of what we need to do is branding, getting out there and delivering an aspiration that Sumo is a place you can come and build a rewarding and secure career. So we took a couple of different strands. One is working with grads in games and getting our brand onto as many campuses as possible. But we then agreed what universities have been successful for us in the past, what universities we want to be at. Ironically, just before lockdown, I recruited a campus coordinator into my team, and we were going to build a whole great plan to get Sumo's brand out there. And of course, that just had to change. So we same as Nick, and probably everybody else moved online. Tried a few different platforms, lots and lots of trial and error before we did our first session, but we ended up doing private YouTube live streams with Discord servers, breakout rooms, and we changed up what we would do if we came onto campus. We just took advantage of the tools and resources that were available, and probably did a lot more direct sessions, live drawing sessions, whatever it might be, and found out what students wanted and gave it to them, and hopefully we'll have given a very transparent story of what opportunities there are at Sumo, and those that would like to take that path have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, okay. So what's the quality of candidates been like? I know that Emma, you talked about perhaps a little bit of a dip in confidence from students who are applying at the moment. How's that transpired?
Yeah, so we've got a great relationship with our partnered college, ELAM, and we spent a lot of time speaking to the students and also to the staff there as well, and asked them how did their students find their UCAS applications this year, and they said that they've got an unusually higher number of students that don't feel confident enough to even go through the process to go to university. And also the students that have applied to go to universities haven't been able to visit the campus, see where they would be, perhaps their halls of residence, their accommodation, meet other students as well. So we've been able to try and use our network and contacts to try and bridge that gap and run some sessions for the students at Elam as an example from Teesside University, so that they can actually have a bit of a Q&A session that they can ask them anything and share their experiences to try and bridge that gap with that pastoral care. Because I say, and we talked about in the earlier session, that going to university is about learning, but it's a big milestone in someone's life. It's having that whole experience as well. You can meet friends for life at university, and if we're not necessarily having that, then that's going to be part of that bigger decision that someone might make to even start studying at that level.
Matt, you mentioned about obviously Brexit and potentially creating a shortage of perhaps more experienced people, but have we seen any sort of drop in quantity of applications for entry-level roles this year?
We haven't seen that. No, I think the entry-level roles are always oversubscribed. Maybe that's one of the reasons we've not felt needing to outreach at that level. So no, I'm not seeing that necessarily.
So it was certainly something that was raised a little earlier this morning, that some of the students, perhaps there was an increase in master's courses being taken and so on, because they felt perhaps that the games industry wouldn't pivot quite as quickly as it did, actually, which I thought was a really interesting perspective. Nick, you've definitely been at GamesEd sessions before, and perhaps talked about some of the quality from the universities in the UK. How's that going for you in terms of the students that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm nearly 6 years now with Playground, and there's been a lot of graduate recruitment throughout those years. And, I think the quality bar that we're seeing from grads is going up year on year. Back when I first, 6 years ago, sometimes you wouldn't see portfolios on graduate, applications, and it's just the bare necessity when you're looking to make an application. The portfolios now are great. People going through our engineering discipline interviews, the pass rate's higher. I sort of joked previously, maybe we need to change the test up a little bit more often. It might be getting shared out, but yeah, it's the university. We mainly hire from universities, both for our grad level roles and also for our associate level roles, our placement students. And the bar's getting higher and higher. I always talk, and I have done for the last couple of years. And I think Emma sort of lent on this a little bit. The communication skills is probably an area where we need to look at with the students and work more with the universities. And that's why I sort of echoed the mock interview side of it. I'm sure with COVID, the students haven't been getting as much access to the career service to do those practice interviews. And I know that it might not be that fashionable, but actually by having a great portfolio, it's just the foot in the door, and it's being able to ace that interview and show that your communication skills are good and that you're a good team fit, which actually lands a graduate a job with any sort of studio within the video games industry. So yeah, more focus maybe on the comm skills and interview preparation now that those portfolios are up there. Those the people are ready for engineering tests, which is all great.
Fantastic. So that's a really great segue into thinking about how you've been selecting and assessing your candidates perhaps over the last year. We've gone to video interviewing, Zoom interviewing. How was that? Emma, you talked about your hirers when we spoke about this. How did they feel when we pivoted to all of that?
Yeah, well, the initial thought, were they're like, great, we can get out of interviewing lots of people. I was like, no, you can't. Here's how we're going to do it. We were able to really quickly look at that whole process and think about it from the candidate experience perspective, and give the hiring managers room to be comfortable to say what where they feel they were struggling. And I run regular training sessions with hiring managers in the studio, do it twice a month, and we go through everything from writing job descriptions through to using interview skills and try to understand what might motivate their team and how they can use that interview to really engage someone ready for for them to start remotely, so that when someone does start and join the team with a bunch of people they've never actually met at a studio they've never set foot in, that it doesn't feel unfamiliar, to build everything up from that perspective. So it's been about building the soft skills, not just for the graduates and people joining, but also for us as well, and to try and work through the things that they might not feel so comfortable with, and for us to all learn from each other, because those learning environments become a bit of a talking circle as well, and being able to share and learn from each other. So they're going really well. They're going really well.
That's great. So have there been any sort of other changes to the way that you've assessed or selected? Are you still doing tests? Matt, I think you said you'd changed up your test. What was that? What was that in?
Yeah, again, I guess echoing Nick, we're seeing, maybe the standards are improving, but we were seeing, we felt that our test was a bit out of date, needed to be changed. And a really important thing is we don't necessarily need people to do outstanding on those tests. What we do usually is run the test, and then we sit down with the candidate and walk through the test and try and get their point of view on what they think or how they think. And it's as much as them explaining, even when they've gone wrong, what happened there or what they were doing, that can make the difference between a hire or a non-hire. So we do occasionally get some low scorers coming in because they've got the right mind. So I think that is true. We did do that, and we have also got more people involved in the process. We have more engineers facing those students when they're applying. I don't think it's a fundamental change really, but I guess our expectations are changing. And just to echo just one tiny thing, our big bugbear is when someone doesn't have a covering letter, and it's amazing how many people apply without one. And if you don't get looked at. It's that simple. So you've got to do the basics that we ask for in the job posting, and we ask for a covering letter. It always reveals more about the individual.
Got it. Thanks, Matt. I think we all know now. That's fine. Kieran, you talked about earlier how hiring had speeded up, but perhaps a little less accurate online. What's made it sort of smoother in terms of time?
Fact that we're not flying folks over from Argentina and the US and Europe, that our time to hire absolutely plummeted. We were moving candidates through the process very, very quickly. We started interviewing remotely a few weeks before we locked down, because we were conscious that it looked like that's where we were going. So right at the beginning, we were finding candidates who previously might have had 2 other offers on the table. We were getting them to offer and they had nothing else, and they were at first stage interviews. So we had a very nice couple of months right at the beginning where we were making hay, but that's all well and good. There's been a big loss to the process on the candidate experience side. So there's a challenge for us around accuracy, but we've adapted our assessment methods, and we're not seeing issues. We're not seeing folks not being successful when they join, which is fab. The real issue, and I think Nick, you might touch this at the beginning. We're not getting them to start to build a relationship with the team, see where they're going to be working, have a better understanding of what they're letting themselves in for. So it's got to be challenging for students coming into the industry right now, because they don't get a feel of what it is they're walking into, other than the people they get to speak to from their bedrooms or kitchens or offices or at home offices. So that for me is a really big loss, and one we haven't really got to the bottom of how we get better.
No, I understand. Gemma, was there anything that I think it's interesting, because of your location, you were already doing sort of video interviewing as a first stage. Is there anything that you had to change in your process to respond to COVID?
Yeah, I think as Kieran was saying there, building that relationship with team members has been a massive focus for us. So more people are now involved in the interview stage, but it's very informal. So we'll play games together, and we'll just get to know people on an informal level, as you would do in the studio, as well as having we're all Zoom quizzed out, but having quiz nights and just sort of stages like that all the way going through. And we run, we call them brown bag lunches, where myself and John, our CEO, will meet with new starters, and we'll go through the company history, what we're about, what our vision, what our mission is, and gives everybody a chance to meet us. You know, we're not in the hiring the hundreds. We're like Matt, we've hired 59 people, and the response we get for how people feel integrated and part of Dovetail is outstanding. It's really, you know, I feel they're much more vocal and positive about their experience with Dovetail over the last year, because they feel like they're Dovetail, and that was my concern going into this, is they could feel very separate, but they're not.
No, totally. We've had two questions, both on onboarding. Chris has asked us about how's it been? How do you make people, particularly those where it might be their first job, feel integrated? Does it just take longer? And Alan from Staffs has commented that we've obviously mentioned that it's quite difficult for grads to be onboarded, but what are some of the best practices from the studios for that? Any advice for educators so that we can help students make that easier? So let's talk about onboarding in a little more detail. I know something that you guys had all mentioned to me was this feeling of perhaps enforced social interaction. I know we've certainly done a lot of that in our business to keep us, you know, glued together, as it were. So I think this is obviously really important to everybody. So can each of you sort of talk about something that you've done at your studio to onboard? Nick, you're in my top left. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, recruitment isn't completely, you know, involved with onboarding. It's a very much a team sort of effort with the rest of ops, HR, finance, and the development team. But I think, you know, when I speak to our new stars on the first day, I think the setting the tone that, you know, it's okay to ask questions, and to ask lots of questions, and not to be afraid of asking questions is really critical. You know, if they were sitting in the studio, you can just turn around and tap someone on the shoulder and ask away. You know, typing something in a Teams channel or on a direct message can seem a bit more sort of formal, and they shouldn't be afraid of that. You know, ask as many questions as you want and as many times as you want. The last thing we want someone to do is sit there not knowing, like not wanting to ask a question and being in a spiral, because that's not great for their mental health straight away. Yeah. So being, you know, prepared to ask questions and not afraid is the critical thing that, you know, I think we start with our onboarding.
Gemma, you talked a little yesterday about perhaps having documented an awful lot more of your processes and things so that people can learn. Tell us a bit more about what you guys have done.
We launched Dovetail Academy, which is our internal resource, and a lot of our documentation is on there. So it's very easy, I think, to forget something you've launched a few months ago, and then a new lot of people join and they're like, oh, what's that you're talking about? So it's always reiterating. We do a lot more check-ins, so our facilities receptionist obviously is not in the office, and her job through this period has been to check in with everybody, do those daily check-ins. For our weekly company meetings, we request people turn their video on so we can see their faces. It's lovely to see the faces and the names, and we've made sure that it's responsibility of everybody in the team to make that team member feel welcome. It's not just the hiring manager and the HR team. Everybody has a part to play in that, and that's really helped.
Anything from Kieran, Emma, Matt? I know buddies have always been a popular thing to help with onboarding.
We've got buddies. Oh, sorry, Emma. Do you want to go first?
Oh,
go ahead.
So yes, with regards to, so I've got a slightly different view with it. I can see it from a few different angles with regards to onboarding. So yes, being a part of the wider HR team, it is absolutely a team effort, from making sure the person gets the right kit and asking the right questions and understanding what their home environment is like as well, and build that relationship with them all the way through the recruitment process so that you have that really smooth handover. But I've had 4 new members of my team that have joined, and they've joined during lockdown, and none of them have seen the inside of the studio. So I've had to work really hard to get to know them and to understand what motivates them and keep them really energized in this. And also during that time, you know, with parents as well. So at the homeschooling environment, as well as learning a new job and trying to make sure that you feel like you're contributing to the studio. And it's been all sorts of different things, because they're all at different stages in their lifetime as well. Some of absolutely want to do loads of, you know, Zoom socials, and others just don't have the energy for that when they've got a family to look after as well. So it is about onboarding. Sometimes it can't be uniform. You need to take that time to understand our individual, and as a lead, to try and being able to be flexible with that and try and help understand that their experiences are going to be slightly different, and you can lean into it. But, you know, even things like a Spotify playlist for the team has been quite insightful, understanding people's different and varied musical choices.
Nice. Anything to add?
I feel your pain with that one. So
no,
yeah,
this has
been a sorry, is my connection a bit dodgy? I think possibly. Sorry. Yeah. So, but buddies and mentors have been critical, but this is we're iterating constantly. We're finding what's working and what's not. The only thing I'd add is, yeah, the budding and mentoring from getting folks up to speed, and overuse of teams to make sure folks are aware that and have the time and space to be able to get developed on the tools. But a big part of it for us, because of that candidate experience issue I mentioned a moment ago, is embedding them into the culture, into the studio, into the teams. So when they first join, part of it is getting them embedded into the studio, but part of it is getting them into cohorts of new starters, because none of them have met anybody. They need to build relationships quite quickly to begin to feel like they're part of something. So yeah, we have coffee mornings for every cohort of new starters at all levels. And from that have stemmed lots of really cool groups, Discord servers, gaming groups. There's quite a few different D&D nights that go on at the moment, and that is people who would never have met pre-lockdown, because there are lots of different studios globally, but now they're starting to build relationships across all of the different studios. And there's elements like this, I think, that when we do go back, we'll keep them. I think we'll keep doing that. Is that an answer machine?
I'm so sorry, it might actually cut me off as
just to pick up on Kieran's point, I think there's been a number of things that we've done as a result of this that won't change. Like a lot of the social responses that went online, I think will sustain. We've done, as many other studios done, you know, pizza nights and cinnamon bun making and so on. But fundamentally, almost on day one of lockdown, we completely changed how we communicated to our studio, and we moved from what was really a 6 weekly stand up and, you know, series of top down things to doing a daily studio update. And we share that task across about 25, 30 areas of responsibility, and each of them every day will write in some detail about what's going on in their particular area, what's happening with their people, successes, achievements, and so on. And it's been actually, you know, for the majority of the studio who would only ever have seen a small part of our project, it's really opened up everything, and it's allowed people to flourish in how they write and how they show off. Some people chose to use video, some people showed their work, and that's on top of the usual, you know, show and tells and things that we do anyway. And I think that culture now is sort of being passed on. So line managers are handing it off to team members to write the piece. And so it's a really nice way of just, I think we all know so much more about what we're doing than we did pre-lockdown as a result of it.
Thank God, something's good. Guys, we've got about 10 minutes left together. And I just wanted to try to pull out a couple of the main things that we want to talk about. Matt, I know that you've developed some programs specifically because of the skill shortage that you feel is on the horizon. I'd really like you to talk to us a little bit about those.
So I've got two, but I'll start with maybe the one that's more pertinent for this group first. So we talked about junior entry and software engineering. I'm very pleased to see a C++ unit in the curriculum on this session. We feel that who we get are not ready for work, really. That's the sort of honest assessment, and that it can take up to 2 years before we think that they're really ready for work. And so a lot of our thinking as we go down to say, well, we can't get these mid and seniors, we've got to make it ourselves. How do we do that? So we have a role posted on our website today called a developer advocate. I don't really know what we call this thing, but our vision is it's someone with teaching experience and academic with C++ skills who will be embedded inside the studio and will be, working alongside the line managers, the technical steering groups, the technical directors, to ensure that all our junior entrants are able to accelerate their capabilities and skills, individual contexts, individual needs, but a more consistent and a more accelerated approach to make sure that they're not held back by their line manager or the piece of work that their department is working on in order to bring them through. And I see that as creating a cadre of expertise, that they work together. And in time, this is a pyramid system. They will train the next generation, who will train the next generation. And beyond that will be our outreach individuals, the people that can talk to young people that want to come through the studio system and kind of see, how that will do. So, in other words, we're trying to really continue what I guess is university education within the studio for the purposes of really, challenging these individuals to do more than the day job or just do the requirements of the day job in order to get that skill set going. So at the moment, we've just got the role posted. We have potentially 12 to 15 individuals that are waiting for this advocate to come on board and start the acceleration process. We see this person as creating a curriculum, if you like, but also being able to give that individual coaching and teaching more than coaching. We have mentors, we have buddies, we have people that can help, but this is someone who can get to the root cause of how to teach and how to get really difficult concepts in the right order of getting through an individual with the experience of having done that before.
Did you want to talk about?
So yes, the other initiative goes younger. So so the future of work is upon us, and I spend a lot of time thinking about what does that mean, and what we know about our younger team members is that coming to work, that big next step, is also a social experience. They want to meet colleagues and friends of the same age. They want to play football together if that's what they're going to do, or play D&D after work or whatever it might be. And they'll go out together and they'll get flat shares and so on and so forth. And in thinking about the future of work is highly flexible. The fact that we're in London, I think, is to advantage. People fancy moving to London and having a London experience. So there's that element of how do we, make this a cultural thing. But if we take that further, what it really means is I'd like, my team members to live locally. I'd like them to walk to work. And we can either try and hire them and get them to move, or we can try and find them in our neighbourhood and grow them in our neighbourhood. So we've got a program which we are calling a studio-specific training scheme. In an olden time, when I was younger, you'd call it apprenticeship, but you're not allowed to do that now because apprenticeship has to do certain things in certain ways for certain rules. But what we want is people to learn on the job, getting their hands dirty, sitting in with the teams. So targeting 18-year-olds, not necessarily from the local area, but we've obviously outreach to our community groups that are active in the local area through the 5 local councils that we neighbour. Hackney Marshes football ground organises a bunch of things, a number of community groups. And we've we've landed our first 3. They joined in September. They'll work in non-technical roles for 2 years. The next intake we'll do this September will be more technical roles. So we're looking now specifically for interest in coding, for example, pre-18. And the vision here is that these are usually individuals who either can't go to university or choose not to, but have talent. You know, they're identified as got capability, and this is a route to get them through to the games industry and get them working and seeing what it takes, and hopefully showing them, you know, that certain orientation or direction in how they do their work will lead to real jobs and real skills that, you know, you won't necessarily need the university education to do. So yeah, very early in there. And again, the vision is that this intake helps us do the second year better and then the third year better, and we grow it out. So we start with 3, we'll have 6 this summer, and I'd like to see it grow to a reasonable number, let's say 20 in the next few years. And then some of those will continue through the studio, some will leave. And I hope, you know, that we build little hubs of expertise outside the studio as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that.
Fantastic, Matt.
Yeah, these are really brilliant initiatives that that are just all about growing for the future, aren't they? I think in the last couple of minutes together, it would be really great to talk about some of the things maybe that you'd like to maintain, that perhaps, you know, you've kind of put in place because of the pandemic. But these are things that hopefully will also, they're about culture perhaps and retention of staff. Probably for each of you. Gemma, something you said yesterday was really interesting about the, was it a 90-minute meeting free zone?
That's it, yeah.
Where
So
did
we have
amazing.
every Monday to Friday, 12 to 1:30, no meetings are allowed. I think we were all experiencing back-to-back meetings. When you're in the office, you don't book them like that at all, and for everyone was in some sort of meeting or other, and it's not an hour and a half lunch break. It's a time to have obviously a break away from the screen, but also to catch up and just decompress, because we were all finding that our days were getting longer, and we really try and focus on having a life-work balance. Life is first and work is secondary to that, and it just wasn't happening for us. So that has been a saviour, and I will definitely be pushing that. If we return to an office situation, then yeah, I'll keep that in.
Emma, you have well, you're definitely nodding.
Yeah, I'm all about this. We've got focus Fridays. So Fridays, you can have a meeting or 2 in the morning, but the afternoon is for focus work. But also, we've set that time aside. So if you wanted to use that for learning and development, you're absolutely encouraged to use that time to do it as well. So you can use that time to look at Udemy account, or you can start following up on perhaps some other talks or some other work that you'd like to be able to do that you just can't if you're, you know, in those constantly intentional conversations and meetings that you're having to set up as a result of working in this way. And I think as well it sets a good tone for new people joining the industry, that it isn't just all, you know, constant working and graft, that there is room to be able to develop and grow, and that you can set those boundaries out, and that's absolutely the way we should be working.
We have had a question from Rob about whether studios are going to look at remote staff working as a permanent option, you know, allowing people to remain working from home. Does anyone, I know this is still a very evolving situation, so is anyone sort of willing to say yet what's been decided?
We haven't decided, and if it was still working through the options, but for me there's a difference between remote, hybrid and office working, and there are complexities to each and every one. We've obviously hired people with a remote start, and they're acing it and it's working, and this has been an experiment that none of us would have had the opportunity to do if it wasn't forced upon us. So I think there's certain benefits, but there are downsides, and a hybrid situation, you know, we held a head of departments meeting and everybody put their ideas in. It's like, what happens if 2 of my team are in, we're on a Teams call, and the other 3 are there. Well, or do we go into meeting rooms to that? Do we have noise cancelling? It's kind of the impact then on the office is wider. As well as at home, we have people that just don't have the space. You're in a shared apartment in their bedroom. That's where they're living and sleeping and working. That's not good for your well-being and your mental health. And others that have got pets in this time and want to stay at home because they're seeing the benefits to it.
Mm-hmm.
What about maintaining culture, Kieran? How can you maintain culture if you've got this hybrid working environment?
I guess Sumo is an interesting position because we've been operating with over 3 studios, one of which is outside the UK since 2013. So we're fairly used to operating remotely, although the work from home model was forced upon the studio. But I think what we've realized is it does work for certain roles, for certain people, for certain projects. There are scenarios where we can't do it. So the realistic kind of next picture will be that there will be certain roles that will be hybrid, certain roles that work from home, and certain that will be in studio, and that'll be based on what the role is and sometimes what project it's working on. We can never go to a full remote, but in terms of something we're going to retain from this, Matt mentioned about kind of the social stuff. The universities, I think we've realized that this is the remote opportunities have given us a lot more agility to get our people in front of much more students than we previously did rocking up to unis. So I think we're probably going to look at retaining a lot of the remote events that we've done after we get back, and also get to unis and just do as much as we possibly can. It's made us realize there's a lot more we can do that we really didn't take advantage of before.
Well, I think our time is up, panel. We've got so many other things that we wanted to talk about and share, but time just absolutely flies. From me, a huge thank you for sharing everything. I've really enjoyed listening actually and learning myself. And thanks to Rick for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, and thank you, Liz.
Oh no, thank you so much. What I really miss from the real world is being able to applaud really interesting sessions, and I've been wanting to applaud all of our sessions today. That one in particular, I thought it was really inspirational. Thank you so much, everybody. Right, we're going to be coming back at 12:30 for our next session, which is on apprenticeships. I think hopefully some really exciting news to hear about how some game-specific apprenticeships are just starting to be developed. Look forward to seeing you in 10 minutes. Thanks all.
Bye.